Welcome back to the Shuffle Squad. Zach Lesage here. I'm back from San Antonio Regionals, and I'm here to kind of showcase where my thoughts are on an early Prismatic Evolutions tier list. Now, we don't have a lot of information. We have zero major events outside of Japan. And I think like one thing that I've noticed is different regions play differently. Japan plays different decks than us because they're playing different rules a little bit. On like 30-minute timed best of one is going to be a lot different. So a gigantic League Cup is going to be different than a gigantic regionals. So until we see the results of Merida, Puerto Rico, EUIC, London, whatever, our format's not going to be fleshed out. And you might be like, yo, what actually happened in Prismatic Evolutions? Well, we added Regigigas and we added Badu. But those are really two cards that are going to impact the metagame a lot more than most people realize. So head out to your nearest game store, pick up a Prismatic Evolutions ETB if they have any. And that's almost a joke at this point because I've not been able to get a Prismatic Evolutions ETB. Or you can check out our sponsors at Kayfabe Cards. They might have some Badu and Regigigas available for you to pick up. You can go to ptcgeostore.com and get some code cards to craft these cards online. And of course, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and let me know in the comments what you think the best decks are from Prismatic Evolutions. Now, I think I sorted this in as close to alphabetical order as possible. So we're going to start off with Ancient Box. Now, Ancient Box is the deck that ended up coming second at that first major event in Japan. And you might have thought that it would have been like tier S since it came first, second. I think Ancient Box has fallen off a little bit. I think Ancient Box is probably the definition of a tier 2 deck through and through. It doesn't always have the results of what we want. It's kind of a cluster, you know what I'm saying? Like, it just doesn't always come to life, doesn't always have the best matchup spread, but it can creep up in the right moments. A deck that's going to be pretty new to this list is going to be Arceus Armarouge. Now, it's really a deck that has some decent matchups against some of the top decks. I think what I'm going to have to do is put that in a tier 2.5. Typically, it'd be a tier 3 deck. But in this case, it actually holds on to some matchups. It might actually move up to tier 2, giving it, but it's Arc Armarouge, it might fail a little bit. Archaladon, to me, is a deck that surprised me a lot. And I think what I'm going to do is put this at number 1.5. It's quite not a tier 1 deck. It's not S tier, but it does hold its own against a lot of decks, so I'm pretty excited about that. Ceruledge is another deck that's kind of coming back, can hold its own against Badu, and I think a lot of these decks that can hold their own against Badu or play a one of Badu themselves end up just like in tier 2. They're like not bad, kind of like middle of the road, like 1.52 obviously, given this at like is going to be the middle, but I think like it's hard to like, there's probably only 5 like decks between S and 1 when it comes down to it. Maybe I'll adjust things in a little bit as I go through the list, but we'll determine that. Shen Pao, ooh, I feel like I'm trying to think of like decks that are towards the top of the list without giving any kind of like too many secrets. I don't know really where I want to put this. I mean, I don't think it's a tier 2 deck. I'll put it like that. It just hasn't seen really much success in any formats. And I can only imagine since it's a rare candy deck, I'm going to have to put it back into 3. Unless someone cooks up a Grand Tree Shen Pao backs list, it's there. Charizard to me is moving on to where it was previously 1 tier in our last format. I think we're going to have to drop it a tier for now. Because it still has all the right answers and can hold its own against a lot of the metagame. It does have to kind of default to playing Grand Tree, at least for now. You could YOLO it and avoid some Badu, but considering that some of the top decks like Dragapult and Gardevoir play Badu, Charizard probably has to play Grand Tree. Speaking about decks that are bussin', I think Gardevoir is going to be one of our first S tier decks. So when I think about Gardevoir, Gardevoir can have access to Badoo, Monkey Dory sounds like some crazy plays. And I think like people think that you might not be always playing TM Evo when it comes to be playing this deck. I think you still do play TM Evo when it comes to playing this deck. So Gardevoir to me is going to be our first S tier deck. If you haven't started playing Gardevoir, you might want to start countering Gardevoir. So all the Gardevoir players can rejoice. I think Gardevoir is absolutely at the top of the format and holds its a really strong matchup spread against the field. Gouging Fire. I do like some of the aggressive decks, but I do think Gouging Fire, I'm trying to think about some of the top decks that are up there. It doesn't really, like, it's probably 2.5. Probably can't put it at tier 3 just yet. But it does hold its own to some degree. Like it's fine-ish, I think. It doesn't really play rare candies. It has its own ways to build up energies. Plays Monkey Dory already, so it's probably 2.5. Thorns to me, I'm trying to think about other decks that have abilities. You don't really shut off too many of the important ones. So I think Thorns probably falls into a 2.5 category. Just not really countering a lot of the upper metagame, or there maybe Badoo is an easier way to be countering the metagame. So Thorns is really just a counter to what was at the top of the metagame when it won Worlds, right? And since then, we've seen it kind of slip down, not really be as strong. And then there's just other decks that just like, it's just not as potent as what it used to be. Lost Zone Box is actually interesting. I feel like Lost Zone Box is close against Gardevoir, but it loses against Dragapult, could hold its own. I'm gonna put Lost Zone Box probably at tier 2. And I think the reason why I'm going to put Lost Zone Box at tier 2 is, actually, I'm going to put it at 2.5. I think there's still a lot of Pokemon with a lot of HP, and you still might run into decks that just run Kyurem, like Regidrago, even though Regidrago is not popping off in this format. We'll get into that a little bit more. Lost Zone Box, to me, seems like it's a tier 2.5 deck, if I've ever seen one. Lugia is probably going to be up here at S tier. I think that's probably fine when it comes down to it. Also, I'm probably going to move, I'm probably being a little bit too harsh on some of these when it comes down to it. There's probably just like better decks up there. These are probably tier 1, or maybe this is 1.5. I think I'm just going to adjust it as I look through. But yeah, Lugia has answers for everything. It gains the new Regigigas, giving yourself an answer to kind of just 330 knockout a Charizard, knockout a Dragapult, knockout a Tealmask. Seems quite good. Palkia, Dusknoir, I think Palkia decks are kind of on their way up. So I'm going to put them at like the 1.5-ish area. Not necessarily at it. This might be an easier tier list if I actually like, maybe I'm being too specific and it's making things harder. I think if we had like S1, 2, 3, I think sometimes the 1.5s are throwing me off this week until the metagame actually has those direct slots, but we'll get through it. I think that Palkia Dusknoir has a lot of plays to say. Might not necessarily hold its own against Badoo as much as I want it to, but has some decent matchups against some other top decks like Gardevoir and stuff like that. Same thing, Palkia Pegos, I think, seems quite well positioned. So Palkia just seems up. There's some decks there that were like kind of holding it back, and now it holds its own against those. So Palkia seems decent at 1.5. Maybe give it its final last chances at EUIC before it gets rotated. Pidgeot Control, I actually don't know how Pidgeot Control plays out. I'm trying to think, like, Pidgeot Controls always, like, Control typically lose to Lugia from time to time. And Lugia's S tier. I'm probably going to put it at tier 2. I almost want to put it at 1.5, but we just don't have enough information about the deck right now. Raging Bolts, I think is probably just going to be a tier 2 deck. To me, that seems quite normal. It holds its own against some decks. It doesn't always beat all the other decks. nothing really much more to comment on that. It just kind of like, it's a deck that exists and it's a deck that's not bad. So 2 is pretty like neutral in the metagame, or it might have some polarizing matchups on both sides. 1.5 is really where we're starting to hit those like better matchups across the board. 1 is more or less up there. I'm probably going to put the Charizard back up there. That seems fair. And then tier S is just the best decks in format. Drago is going to go down to a tier 2 deck. So it's falling all the way from S tier last format all the way down to tier 2. A lot of it's because the decks available in the metagame. You can see decks like Lugia, Archaludon up there at the top, really causing it to fall down. A lot of the Palkia decks. So Regidrago not only is getting countered out of the formats, it's losing to Bidoof because it's stopping energy switch and gaining those valuable turns. I'm going to put Regigigas, Pikachu. Hasn't really seen much success outside a few like lower day 2s. I don't think there's anything that's like really stopping it. I could change my mind later, but I'm going to put it at tier 3 right now. Until it pops up in the format, I'm just not really seeing it. Turbo Roaring Moon to me is probably just going to be a tier 2 deck. Like a lot of the other decks that just kind of exist. That's where the line is going to be on this list. Dragapult Dusknoir, I think, is going to hit our 1 kind of deck. It's one of the most played decks in format, but I don't think it's necessarily on the same level as Gardevoir and Lugia. Definitely can be a little bit slower. Definitely can not necessarily... It doesn't hit as hard as I want it to all the time. Dragapult Thorns, to me, is probably going to be a... I don't think it's as powerful as what we want it to be, because you're probably not running Bidoof. So I'm going to put it at tier 2.5. To me, it seems just like it was kind of like a deck that held on while it was playing Bidoof. So that, to me, like at 2.5, that seems probably fair. Future Box, because Gardevoir and Lugia seem good at the top, I'm going to put this at 2.5, not 3. There might be a chance that the deck could pop off again in the future. Snorlax, since Gardevoir and Lugia both have answers to it, I'm going to put Snorlax towards more of a... I don't know if I want to put it at 2 or 2.5. I think it loses to Archaludon as well. Probably, I think I'm going to put it at 2.5 right now. I think it's just getting countered out of the format a little bit. Tropico's Dusknoir, probably just going to be putting at number 2. Tropicos is a very powerful archetype, and having access to Dusknoir seems quite strong. Wallstall, both Gardevoir and Lugia and Archaludon have answers to it, so I'm going to probably put it right here at 2.5. Goldango, ooh. I think Goldango doesn't, like, it does okay against Gardevoir, it does okay against, like, it's like fine. I think I'm going to put it at 2 right now. I'm going to have to double check how I feel about that, but that's one of the ones that I definitely want to work on in the future. Cloth to me is probably, again, going to be another 2.5-ish deck. Another 2-ish deck, because it can basically, like, rob some early prize cards off a deck like Gardevoir, or Dragapult, or Charizard. And Miraidon, I'm going to put at 1.5. I think Miraidon's really the big winner here, because it has decent matchups against Gardevoir, Lugia, and just being able to rob some early prize cards. So it's really a deck that is largely been off my radar, but has kind of been there for a minute now. I really like how this list kind of played out. I wasn't necessarily as sure as what I wanted to be. I'm sure things are going to adjust over the next couple weeks as we prepare for things, but to me, like, this seems like a pretty solid, like, place for the metagame. Now, since I am creating all of these little icons that you could see right here, if you want to see a deck on here that's relevant, I think there's a couple that might be more relevant than I originally thought they would be, like Dragapult Charizard, for example. Let me know in the comments, and if it's anything outside of like United Wings or something like that, that might not necessarily be, that's not just a tier 3 fodder. Totally would love to create some for the Prismatic Evolutions format. So if there's any archetypes that you think that I'm missing, I'm going to keep on scrolling through Play Limitless and see what there is. Let me know. Other than that, I'm going to be covering out a lot of these decks, probably using this tier list as a way to kind of cover them in order for some updated decks. So that's what I'm excited to see and kind of create when it comes to forming this channel. Other than that, stay tuned for more great content on the squad. I will be having like a top 10 best decks list coming out with all new Prismatic lists this week. So if you're looking for some lists for your cups this weekend, totally would love to help you out with that. And if you're ever looking to support me as a content creator, you could always hit me up for some coaching or anything of the sorts. I'll catch up with all y'all later. Peace out and have a great one. Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes. You made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this entire video from the Shuffle Squad. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate each and every person that supports our content, watches what we have going on every single day, every single week, even from time to time, and continuously allows us to have a forum to project our creative content towards the Pokemon TCG community. So if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment to help boost the YouTube algorithm. That being said, we'll catch you with our next video. Thanks again. Take it easy.